In this video, we're going to be defining inverse secant, cosecant, and cotangent function. We'll start with the secant. Y equals the secant inverse of x, which tells me, by definition, x equals the secant of y. Now, x is going to be greater than or equal to 1, and y is going to be greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to pi, but we do not have y equal to pi over 2. That way we're not dividing by 0. Okay? The cosecant inverse function, which is also x equals cosecant y. This is for x greater than or equal to 1, and y is between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. Okay, you think about cosecants, reciprocal of sine. Sine is stuck between those, sine inverse stuck between those two, just like cosine is a reciprocal of secant, and cosine inverse is stuck between those two values. And we don't want y to be equal to 0 here, otherwise we would be dividing by 0. The last one, y equals cotangent inverse x. This is x equals the cotangent inverse of y. Now this is true for all x, negative infinity to infinity, and it's restricted for y between 0 and pi. So one thing I want you to note about the cotangent inverse, this has the same restriction for y for cosine inverse, okay, x. All right, so from 0 to pi. So we're going to use those techniques. Now, I want to find the exact value of cosecant inverse of 2. How do I do this? Remember, trig inverse tells me angles, so I'm going to set this equal to the angle. Now I'm going to solve. I'm going to rewrite this by definition. This is the cosecant of theta equals what? 2. Okay. Now this is true as long as theta is between pi over 2 and negative pi over 2, and theta is not equal to what? 0. Okay, that's what our restrictions are. Okay, now cosecant is rewritten. I can write this as 1 over the sine of theta equals 2. Okay, and if I multiply and by sine of theta on both sides, I get 1 equals 2 sine theta, and then I divide by 2, so I get sine theta equals 1/2. What theta gives me 1/2? Well, if I plug in theta equal to pi over 6, which just so happens to satisfy that, then I get 1/2. Therefore, the cosecant inverse of 2 is equal to pi over 6. Okay? Now, the next video, we're going to talk about how to do approximating the value of inverse trig function.